prepared very rich and colorful tourism products in the holiday, and we have tapped the resources of tourism that can be made open and available for the population. For example, yesterday, Forbidden City and National Museum announced that they will be open tomorrow. According to an incomplete survey, 70% of the tourist sites in China have gradually opened to the public. And on the other hand, we must also be mindful that we are still in the midst of this pandemic, and there is still a tremendous amount of pressure. So, to open the tourism sites, we have to open them in different time windows. There has to be order, and you have to reserve before going to these sites. And in so doing, we can guarantee safety and order at those tourist sites. In order to do that, President Xi Jinping has made a couple of guidelines regarding resuming business operation and promoting economic recovery. According to the requirements of the Central Leadership Team on the fight against COVID-19, the Culture and the Tourism Ministry has formulated a work plan to respond to the central level requirements, and the Ministry of Culture and Tourism and National Health Commission have jointly issued a work plan to gradually and orderly open the tourism sites. And on April the 27th, the Central Publicity Department organized a meeting to specifically talk about the safety of tourist sites during the May Day holiday. And this meeting made some specific arrangements on the opening of the tourist sites during the May Day holiday, and we have to follow through the requirements of President Xi Jinping and the central government so as to strengthen the management of the tourist sites and ensure that there is health and safety and order at the tourist sites, so that we can provide safety guarantee to all the tourists and showcase an image that is featuring harmony, order, and safety. Thank you very much, Minister. And now the floor is open for questions. And before you raise a question, please introduce yourself. First question, please. I'm with CGTN. So the May Day holiday is coming to us. What are the measures taken by the Ministry of Culture and Tourism to strengthen management of tourist sites? Thank you very much for your question. So this is a very hot topic these days. The tourism in the upcoming May Day holiday will be featuring three influence factors. The first influence factor is that most of the population have been staying at home for quite a long period of time. So there is a huge enthusiasm and demand for people to go out of their doors and travel. And second, in a lot of places, there are preferential policies released, such as free entrance to the sites, and also coupons are released to stimulate tourism during this holiday. And the third influence factor is that only a limited portion of the tourism resources will be open for the public. And I'm talking about two different types of limitation. The first is about resources. For example, a lot of the inner city tourist sites will not be opened because of the control and containment on the COVID-19. And also we have a limitation on the flow of tourists. And we allow only for 30% of the tourist flow. And if we put together all these three factors, then there will be huge amount of pressure at those tourist sites. So if we slack in our efforts, there will be a lot of risks. So given these risks, we have taken a couple of measures. The first is to put in place a reservation system, and President Xi Jinping, when he was inspecting in Hangzhou, he particularly talked about the reservation system in Westlake wetland, and he said that this is also demonstrating the government's capacity in governance. All the tourist sites across the country have now put in place a reservation mechanism. We encourage people to reserve in advance and come to the sites at different time windows so that we can transform this passive tourist flow management into active advanced management so that we can avoid people congregation at these tourist sites. Let me just give you two examples. Tomorrow, Forbidden City and National Museum will be open to the public, and this will also feature a limited openness and a openness that is based on reservation. And for Forbidden City, for tomorrow and every day, we only allow 5,000 people, and between 8:30 and 1 o'clock in the p.m., we allow only 3,000 tourists. Between 1 o'clock and 4 o'clock in the afternoon, we only allow 2,000 tourists, and that's for the Forbidden City. For the National Museum, we have a daily tourists cap of 3,000, and between 10 and 1:30, 1,500 people, and between 1:30 and 3:30 p.m., and another 1,000 people. So you have to reserve in advance. And second, we will reasonably control the flow of tourists at the tourist sites. And different tourist sites, they will have to make their own plans to reasonably control the overall size of tourists. And as I have already mentioned, that we have a limitation standards of 30%, and they have to regularly update the information of tourist sites and release information in advance and provide the information to the tourists. And at the entries and also core areas of the tourist sites and narrow channels and pathways, the tourist sites, they will have to put in place a couple of measures and also make flexible management methods for the control of tourist flow. And the third requirement is to avoid people gathering and a huge amount of congregation. And the different departments are working together with the Department of Publicity and the Bureau of Public Security to guide the flow of tourists so that we can channel the tourist flow into different places, and we will put in place inspection points and also open more channels and pathways so that the tourists, they will not gather all in front of the entrance. And for some of key sites in the tourist spots, for areas where it's likely to have a people gathering, we will have to keep a social distancing requirements. And for example, if you are talking about the restaurants, and it's very easy for you to have people gathering. And for those type of places, we will have to strengthen our capacity in dispersing the crowd, and also we will have to guarantee that there is a distance between all the tourists. We also need to carefully design the tourist routes so that the tourists, they don't randomly end up in a huge crowd. And also you need to put in place very good hygiene measures. The tourist sites must have very good ventilation and refreshment of the air in some closed environments, such as restaurants and indoor places. And it is highly advised that tourists should wash their hands often. We need to take the temperatures of the tourists. And according to the reality, and at some of the tourist sites, we will have to ask our tourists to present their health code, and because we have a health QR code on the phones of tourists, and this can be used as a measure to strengthen the management, and wherever a abnormal health status was identified, and the person has to be put into isolation. And also we have to strengthen emergency drills and guarantee safety for tourism, and the different tourist sites have to conduct big data analysis so that you can have a projection of how many tourists that you're going to have at your tourist sites, and you need to make contingency plans and conduct emergency drills and improve your capacity responding to those emergencies. And also when there is an emergency, the emergency can be handled in the first place. Thank you. Next question, please. The lady sitting in the fourth row, please. I'm with China News Agency, and the Labor Day holiday is coming, and the weather forecast is showing that we're going to have a very high temperature. And how will that affect the spread of the disease? How about Mr. Xu? I will first give a response, and let's see what academician Wang Chen has to say about this. So, the coronavirus is an RNA disease, and it's the shape of the virus is like a sphere, and it's very sensitive to heat, and also to X-rays. And most of the disease that transmit through droplets are very sensitive to temperature, and that is why influenza is very likely to occur in autumn and winter. And the general belief at present is that the coronavirus is transmitted through droplets and direct contacts. As for whether the coronavirus will be affected by the temperature, and we're still in the process of understanding this, and we will have to need a lot more data. But at present, our current knowledge shows that it's very important to have in place very good personal protection. You need to avoid traveling into high-risk areas, wear a mask, wash your hands often, have good ventilation, and avoid people gathering. Maintain a healthy lifestyle, and keep personal hygiene. And this is the advice I have to every one of you. And maybe when the weather changes and when the temperature increases, a lot of the places in China's south, they will use air conditioners, and I advise you to do a disinfection with your air conditioner, because air conditioner is generally believed to be the source of a lot of the viruses, and it's very important that you disinfect your air conditioning system. Next question, please. Thank you very much. CGTN. I want to quickly follow up that when people travel during this upcoming holiday, and how can they guarantee health? Well, this question has been answered actually, and let me quickly add a few points. This is very important to everybody, and this is the responsibility of every one of us, and also this is also out of our responsibility for others and at the tourist sites, and also for each and every one of us, we have to be responsible for ourselves as well as for others. So everybody has this sense of responsibility. In the midst of this pandemic, we need to have this awareness of safety and health. There are a couple of points that you need to note down. The first is that we must have this awareness of self-protection. You need to conduct the feasibility study about the travel, and you need to do some homework and learn about the knowledge about the sites that you're going to visit. And at every tourist site, there is a notice that they release for the tourists. And if you're traveling to those places, you have to do some homework and keep an eye on the notice released by the tourist sites. And also, you need to cultivate the habit of reserving before you travel. And you can only travel when you have a reservation. I want to particularly remind our tourists that if you failed in your reservation, do not risk going there by yourself, because on the one hand, you will bring some inconveniences to the management of the tourist sites. On the other hand, you will also bring trouble to yourself. So you have to pay particular attention to reservation, and you have to carefully design your itinerary, and also register your contact information and also your travel information. And I sincerely hope that our tourists can cooperate with the tourist sites when you enter the sites, and also when you travel inside the site. You have to tell the health information and also abide by the regulations of the tourist sites. And in the meantime, you have to protect well of yourself and work together with the tourist sites when they take your temperature. And if you arrive at the tourist sites and you don't feel well, and if you have some symptoms, you have to report immediately to the tourist sites. I also hope that our tourists can cooperate with the authority and managers and take necessary measures to prevent and control the virus. So different sites have different management measures. Some of the measures, they may bring about some additional burdens and procedures, but this is only necessary. And I ask for the understanding of our tourists. And I also hope that our tourists can respect public order, in particular at the entrance, at the key spots of the tourist site, when you purchase the ticket, when you go to the restaurants and when you travel inside the sites, you have to keep a distance with other travelers. And we have a 1 meter line at every tourist spot, and you have to follow social distancing. Everybody has already had good knowledge about personal protection, but I still want to remind you to wear a face mask because we are also in the midst of the pandemic, and some of the asymptomatic cases, they are still infectious, and you have to carefully wear your face masks. And a lot of us are wearing the mask in the wrong way, and the light color side should face directly with your face, and so the darker color side of the mask should face outside, and you have to squeeze the nose part so that you won't generate a lot of air and steam on your glasses, and so you have to follow the procedures on wearing your mask and correctly wear a mask, and this is also very important. And if you wear the mask for a very long time, for example, for 3 or 4 hours, you can consider changing another one. And also, hand washing. Hand washing is strongly advised, and you have to wash your hands with some soaps or disinfectants, or you have to also keep a distance with one another. We have to avoid people gathering, in particularly at restaurants, in public buses, and at family gatherings. And if we are talking about a closed-off environment, it's particularly important to practice these measures, because when there is too many people, and it's highly likely that the virus can transmit through droplets. So you have to avoid some of the places. No matter it is at hotels or restaurants and tourist sites, they will take your temperatures. And well, I have to tell you that not every confirmed case would have a high fever, but most of them would have a high fever. And if you have a fever or some respiratory symptoms, for example, short in breath, or if you feel exhausted, you better report immediately to the tourist sites, and you have to wear a mask and keep a distance with one another so that you can avoid further infection to your family members as well as friends. And this is very important to prevention. If you sneeze or cough, you have to take some extra measures. You have to do that in a very polite manner. And also, when you sneeze or cough, you have to cover your mouth and nose, and maybe with a napkin, and make sure that you don't touch your nose or mouth when you do that. And also, perfectly dispose your napkin after covering your nose for sneeze or cough. Or you can cover your nose or mouth using your elbow. So this will stop the droplets from spreading to other places. And so this is not a habit that you need to develop for this pandemic, but also at normal times, at other times. And so this will bring a lot of benefits to public health. Academic Xinxu, if you have some other points. Well, when you go to a restaurant, you need to keep a distance between different tables, and claim your own food and use your own chopsticks. And if there is too many people at the restaurants, take away the food. And if you are staying in a hotel room, open a window to refresh the air, have good ventilation, and bring your own toothbrushes and soap, and maintain a healthy lifestyle. Keep a reasonable diet. Pay attention to your nutrition. Eat a lot of fruits. Maintain a very good circadian clock. Have good and sufficient sleep. And do not stay out in the night or sleep, very late, because a group immunity is very important. And if you stay out in the night, and you will hurt your personal immune system. So you have to allow your immune system to work to its maximum by ensuring sufficient sleep. And also we will have some mosquitoes during the May Day holiday, and we will have to be mindful about other diseases that can be transmitted through mosquitoes. And in particular in some southern provinces, this has to be looked at. Next question, please. China Daily. So the May Day holiday is coming. A question to the Minister of Culture and Tourism: what are the measures to ensure the safety of tourists? Well, safety is the bottom line of any tourism. Without safety, there is no healthy travels. And that is why at the hot seasons for tourism, we always attach great importance to travel safety. And travel safety is our bottom line. For this year's May Day holiday, we have to focus equally on travel safety and prevention of disease. And I have talked a lot about protection and content over COVID-19, and now I would like to talk a few words about safety. And I would like to talk about the travel enterprises and also the coordination between different departments as well as the tourists themselves. And all the online travel agencies and travel companies, they have to conduct a safety analysis and assessment over the tourist sites, and they have to select qualified suppliers, and they have to look at the qualification of tourist bus drivers, and you have to sign compliant contracts and also contain the risk of fire in wild places. And for cables and large tourism facilities, there has to be a safety inspection in advance. And when they fail to meet the criteria for safety, you have to immediately suspend those services. And we also need to strengthen our capacity in emergency management. And for restaurants at tourist sites, efforts must be made at the emergency exits and the entrance, and inspection must also go to electricity facilities and also other crucial facilities. And this is our requirements for travel enterprises. And also we need to strengthen government regulation. The Ministry of Culture and Tourism will collaborate with the Ministry of Public Security, Transportation, Emergency Management, and also health authorities, so that we can screen potential risks in safety. And we require travel agencies to follow through and perform their responsibilities in travel safety. And during the May Day holiday, we are going to strengthen the regulation and law enforcement in culture and tourism. In the meantime, we are going to strengthen patrols and crack down on illegal business activities in culture and tourism so that we can straighten the markets and protect the rights and interests of our tourists. And this will be done through the coordination between different departments. And also for individual tourists, I want to remind all the tourists that during the May Day holiday, we have to relax, of course. But in the meantime, we cannot slacken our efforts in prevention of the disease. And also we must pay particular attention to our personal safety. And protect yourself when you travel. Before the trip, do some homework so that you gain some knowledge about your destination, about the regulations at the tourist sites, about the policies of the destination, about the regulations in terms of management, about reservation, about the travel at different time windows, and you need to avoid the following. And when there is a people gathering, you need to avoid going into that place. And you need to also avoid going into unsafe place. And also avoid going into tourist sites that are not open to the public. And places that do not have the capacity of reception for tourists, they should be avoided. Next question, please. Thank you very much. At the beginning of this month, when Luo Shugang, the head of medical team to the Wuhan epicenter, answered a TV interview, he said that even when tested negative for coronavirus, it does not mean that it's not infectious. What is your comment on this? The nucleic acid test is not just about the virus, and it's testing the sequence. And the testing section comes from the virus itself, so that is why it's an indirect reflection of the virus. And when you have a nucleic acid, it shows that you have the virus within your body. But although this is not strictly recognized, so if you have nucleic acid, which is showing positive, it means that you have been infected and it can be infectious. And if you have been tested positive for quite a number of times, you have to pay particular attention. And not everybody has to go through a nucleic acid test. And if we do that in a large population, there is also the issue of cost. And we have to bear in mind the characteristics of different regions, different places, and different population, and the purposes of the testing, and do that in a different and do that in a reasonable manner. And any additional comments from academician Xu? No? Now let's go to the next question. Thank you very much. Guangming Daily. And during the epidemic, what are the specific arrangements made by the Ministry of Culture for the upcoming holiday? In terms of travel, civilization. The civilization of tourism is part of the civilization of our world, and it's one integral part of social civilization. Through the civilization in tourism, we can improve the overall civilization of the society. And I'm talking about the politeness and public behaviors, civilized behaviors, and everybody can become a ambassador for civilized behaviors. And so that is why we regularly launch some awareness campaigns about civilized tourism behaviors, and through many different activities, we advocate for civilized behaviors. And for this year's May Day holiday, it will not be an exception. Now we are working together with the Central Office for Civilized Behaviors. We are going to take this opportunity to publicize civilized behaviors so that we can improve the tourism-related civilizations. And we have the following measures in place. First, we are going to release a guideline for civilized tourism behaviors. And before the May Day holiday, we have already released a requirements or a slogan, which is, we do not slacken our efforts in prevention, but we bear in mind civilized tourism behaviors. So this is a slogan that we put forward. This is a slogan that we put out to the society, and this is also a requirement for all the tourist sites. We are directing tourism associations to advocate for civilized behaviors in travel, and through the internet, TV, WeChat, Weibo, and text messages and magazines, we have launched a awareness campaign for civilized travel behaviors. Another effort we did is hold enterprises accountable in this regard. We require the enterprises to put up notices and signages at the entrance, at the key spots of the tourist areas, and public ads must be shown at those places so as to encourage for polite and civilized behaviors. And at those signage boards, we must also broadcast reminders for personal safety and travel safety. And also we have to strengthen voluntary services for tourism. And at the tourist sites, we have to improve voluntary services, and we will put in place volunteers and staff to guarantee that there is civilized behaviors at those public places in tourist spots. And at the restaurants, the same standard is advocated, and we also advocate for civilized behavior at restaurants. On top of that, we also issued some notice from the tourists' perspective. Number one, we hope that the tourists can pay high attention to their civilized behavior during this holiday, and they have to be an ambassador and practitioner of civilized travel, and they must be the pioneer in publicizing the requirements of civilized travel. And when everybody becomes an ambassador for civilized travel, then everybody can become a practitioner of civilized travel. So in the meantime, we also call for every tourist to abide by the regulations of different tourist sites in terms of civilized travel, and we have to set up the rules for civilized travel, and we need to avoid littering. In the meantime, we have to protect the cultural relics. We do not leave graffitis on our walls and sculptures, and also maintain a civilized order at tourist places. We must have the awareness of rules and regulation, And only in so doing can we cultivate the behavior of civilized travel. I hope that our authority and tourist sites and tourists can work together as partners and advocates in civilized travel. Last question, please.
谢谢主持人。小康杂志中国小康网全媒体记者提问：请问专家，针对5一期间青少年儿童、老年及体弱人
So
士，
for the
若需要假
upcoming
期旅游
Labor
出
Day
行，
holiday,
哪些防疫提示
if
和
there are
注意事项？
senior citizens and people with disabilities want to travel, what are the areas that they need to pay attention to? The senior citizens, they are quite prone to the disease. So they have to pay particular attention. And let me quickly add a few points. And I talked about hand wash and disinfection of the hands. And before you wash your hands, avoid touching your face with your hands, and don't touch your lips. And because for influenza and COVID-19, they can be transmitted through your hands and their contact with face. And for the senior citizens, they are quite prone to COVID-19. And once they develop this disease, they can easily become a patient with severe conditions. And for the senior citizens, we have to be particularly cautious. And if you are already senile or old-aged, I advise you not to travel during this holiday. And for children, the same applies to children. We have to strengthen our protection over children. And let me come back to the senior citizens. A lot of them, they have some pre-existing conditions. They have to be protected against not just COVID-19, and also they have to be guarded against other diseases, for example, high blood pressure and cardiovascular disease. So for the senior citizens, they have to be particularly cautious, and when they travel, they have to bring some drugs, and that's very important. And also avoid exhaustion for the senior citizens and children. And for senior citizens, they need to also avoid injury from falling off on the ground. And we also need to take care of our children. And in particular, we have to take very good care of the senior citizens. Academic Xinxu, do you have any additional points? Let me quickly add a few points.
节前布置5一旅游这个安全防护措施中一项需要注意的措施。
Well, this is a very important question, and when we released the measures for travel safety, and this is one of the measures included, and one of the core parts of Chinese civilization is that we treat senior citizens with great respect and care. At different tourist sites, we have in place reception staff. I hope that senior citizens and children, when they encounter some difficulties and problems, and whenever they need help from the tourist sites, they have to ask for the help immediately. And a lot of the tourist sites, they have their own app. You can download that app when you arrive at the destination, and when you have some problem, you can get in contact with some staff immediately, and someone will take care of you. All right, this is the end of today's release, and thank you very much to Luo, Mr. Xu, and Mr. Wang. Thank you very much.